Hello guys, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ifeoluwa, and in this video you'll be learning how to cut and sew a perfectly padded bustier tube top. If this is something you'll be interested in learning, stick around and watch to the end. If you're also seeing this video and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do well to subscribe and also give this video a thumbs up, and feel free to leave your comments or your questions in the comment section. Thank you. Now let's get started. These are the measurements I'm going to need for this tutorial: the bust measurements, the waist measurements, the bust point, under bust, the across back measurements, the front waistline measurements, and the back waistline measurements. So you make sure you measure this separately and accurately, and then you have the armhole measurements. So the first thing I'm going to start with is to measure out the chest line measurements, and to get the chest line measurements I'll be using my armhole divided by 2. So I have 14 divided by 2, which is 7 inches. I'm going to mark that. Then I'm going to mark my bust point, my under bust, and then the front waistline measurements. So I'm going to do the same thing at the other side, so that I'm going to have a straight line, and then I'm going to connect the points together. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to get my armhole. So my armhole divided by 2, I have 7 inches. I'm going to measure it on the shoulder line and on the chest line, and then I'm going to connect the points together. So I'm just going to label this for easy learning. This is the shoulder line, the chest line, the bust points, the under bust, and then the waist line. Now on the shoulder line, I'll be coming down by 1 inch, and whatever I have left I'm going to divide by 2 and mark that point. On that point I'm going to take in 0.75. Now on the chest line, I'm going to divide my bust measurements by 4 and mark it, and then connect those points together. So I'm going to label this as the center front and the other side as the side front. So on my chest line, I'm going to take my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. So I'm going to mark that on the chest line and on the waistline, and I'm going to connect together. Now towards the center front, I'm going to be coming in by 0.5, and towards the side front I'll be going out by 1.5 inches. So I'm going to do the same thing for the under bust, the same thing, and also come out by 1.5, and then I'm going to join them together. I'm going to use my French cuff to connect from the bust point to the under bust. Now I'm going to take my neckline measurements. I'm using 3 inches for the width and also 3 inches for the depth. So I'm not going to need this later on, but it's just good to have it on the paper. Then I'm going to connect my shoulder slants together. Now on the shoulder slants, I'm going to divide what I have there by 2. So I have 4 inches divided by 2, which is 2 inches, and I'm going to connect it into the bust point. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to determine where I want the neckline to be. So for me, I'm just going to leave it at the chest line. So you can go lower than that, or you can go above the chest line. It depends on how exposed you want the chest area to be. Now on the armhole, I'm going to be using 6 inches. So you can also go above or go below. So it just depends on how exposed you want it to be. Now from the armhole to the neckline, I'm going to draw out like a sweetheart neckline. So I'm going to use my French curve to connect those points together. Now on the shoulder darts that we made, we are going to be taking out some inches to prevent gaping. Now towards the center front, I'll be taking 0.5, and towards the side front I'll be taking 1 inch. So altogether I have 1.5 inches. So I'm going to connect that down to the bust point. So the reason why we took out this is because of gaping, so that by the time you wear the top, it is going to stay fitted on the chest. So I'm going to connect it back into the bust point, like that. Now I'm going to take the bust and the waist measurement. So I already have 8.5 as the bust measurements, but whatever I have there, I'm going to replace it back to the bust measurement, so that you're going to have an accurate measurement. Now on the waistline, I'm going to do the same thing. My waist divided by 4, I have 6.25. Then whatever I have there, I'm going to replace it and put it there. So I have 2 inches. Now I'm going to connect from the chest line to the waist line. Now since we're not going to be adding sleeves to this, we are going to be connecting from the armhole to the chest line. So just use your French curve and connect it that way, so it's going to blend into the chest line. The next thing I'm going to do is to take my side darts. So we know the front waistline is 17 while the back waistline is 14. So when you subtract that, you are going to have 3 inches. So I'm going to take the 3 inches on the bust point by the side, and then I'm going to connect it to the bust points. So these are the parts that we are going to be taking out of this top. We don't need this part, so I'm going to just blend this one in so that we won't have any sharp edge. So this is all for the drafting of the front pattern. Now before you cut out, you will notice that by the time you fold this part in, you will notice that one part is higher than the other. So before you cut on fabric, you make sure that you resolve this issue first before you cut it out on fabric. So you blend the neckline back into where it is meant to be, so that by the time you cut out on fabric, one part won't be higher than the other, and then you have to start tracing or cutting out. So it's better you cut it now on the pattern paper. So this part, you don't need this neckline anymore, so you'll be cutting out the new neckline. So you can proceed to cut out now. So for this part, you are going to be covering the side darts. So you're going to be covering it up because we don't need that part too anymore. So you just use your masking tape to cover it up the way I'm doing. Moving on to the back pattern, the first thing I'm going to do is to take out my zip allowance. So I'm going to be using 1 inch for the zip allowance, and I'm going to connect those points that I made together. From the shoulder line, I'm going to take my chest line measurement, which is the armhole divided by 4, and I'm going to take my back waistline measurement. So don't forget, the back waistline measurement is different from the front waistline measurement. So the back we are using 14, and while we are using 17 for the front, and then I'm going to connect the lines together. So this is my shoulder line, and this is my chest line, and then my waistline measurement. Now we are going to take the armhole measurement. So I have 7 inches. I'm going to measure it on the shoulder line and the chest line, and then I'm going to connect together. So where you are measuring from has to be from the new line that we made for the zip allowance. Now on the shoulder line, I'll be taking 1 inch down, and then whatever I have left, I'll divide by 2, and from that point I'll be taking 0.5 for the back, not 0.75. Now on the chest line, I'm going to take my bust measurements. Note that you are taking all measurements from the new line that we made for the zip allowance. So I'm going to connect the armhole together like this. I'm going to make my neckline measurements, which we won't need, but let us just make it. So I used the same 3 inches that I used at the front, and then I used 1 inch for the depth. So that's just a basic neckline measurement. Then I'm going to connect the shoulder slant together. Now on the waistline, I'm going to go in by 1 inch from the zip allowance. That's because the back is slightly curved, so I'm going to go in by 1 inch. So that is going to be the point of my new zip allowance. So I'm just going to connect it together, back together, so that we can know where the new zip allowance is going to be. So from the point of the new zip allowance, from this point of the new zip allowance, we are going to be measuring our waistline measurements, and then we are going to add 1 inch for the darts. So I'm going to measure that out like that, and then I'll connect it from the chest line to the waistline. Now for the darts measurement, we are going to be taking the darts from the the original line. From this original line that we have, you'll be taking the dart, which is 3.5 inches also. Then I'll be taking ½ inch on both sides. On the chest line, I'm also going to take in the 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to connect together. The next thing we are going to do is to create the neckline for the back. So the same armhole that we took for the front is what we are going to be using for the back also. So I used 6 inches for the front. I'm also going to use 6 inches for the back. Now for the neckline, for the center, it depends on where you want it to be, but I'm also going to be using 6 inches because I want it to just be straight. So I'm going to connect together. Now to also prevent gaping from the back, we are going to be taking out some inches. So I'm going to extend the dart leg like that, and then I'm going to take in 0.5 inches on both sides. So that way we are going to prevent skipping from the back also, and then I'm going to connect the 0.5 back into the darts. So whatever we have there on the chest line, we are going to replace it and put it back on the side. So I have about 1 inch. I'm going to replace it and put it back on the chest line, and then I'm going to connect the from the armhole into the chest line using my French curve also, and then connect the chest line back into the waistline. So this is all for the drafting of the back pattern. Then you can proceed to cut out your pattern paper. Now for the dart, you can decide to cut it out, or you can just decide to fold it in like this, so you won't have any folding on your fabric when you want to cut it. So you can just fold it in like this, or if you want to have a line that will show on the back, you can cut it out and then add 0.5 inches on each side and sew together. So this is what we have for the front and the back pattern. So we are going to cut on the fabric now, and then on the fabric you are going to add all the necessary allowance that you need to add. So this is it all cut out on the fabric. I added ½ inch at the sides. Then this is the center front. You are meant to cut it on fold. Now for the side, I also added ½ inch, ½ inch and ½ inch. Then at the side seam allowance, I added 1.5 inches. Now for the zip allowance, there is no need to add anything there, but at the side I added 1.5 inches. Then I added ½ inch up and down. Now I also cut out the lining that I'll be using to turn over the fabric. So that is all you need to cut out. What I want to do now is to cut out the wording that will be used to pad this top. So on the pattern paper for the front, for the center front, I'm going to be coming down by ½ inch, so that the wording won't interfere with the sewing. So I'm going to come down by ½ inch and cut out. So I'm going to cut out the parts that I marked and also cut out the under bust. So I'm going to do the same thing for the side pattern. For the side pattern, I'm also going to come down by ½ inch on the from the neckline and also connect to the under bust using my curve. So this is me cutting it out on the wording. So for the wording, you're not going to be adding any allowance except for the side. So you're not going to add any allowance up and down. You're going to be adding it on the side alone. So I'm going to be adding 0.5 as the allowance on the side. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to use my iron to gum the wording to the fabric. So you're going to take note of the parts where it has the gum. Then I'm going to gum it on the wording. So the wrong side of the fabric will be facing the right side of the wording, and then take it to your iron to gum in place. So this is what I have after gumming together. Now I'm going to join the sides together, the center front and the side front. I'm going to join them together using ½ inch. So this is how it looks like after joining together. So with this, with the way it's looking perfectly padded, you can actually go braless with this top. So the next thing I'm going to do is to join the sides together. So I'm going to be joining the side by the 1.5 inch that I added as the allowance. So for the back, I'm going to join the side of the back to the side of the front. So you just pin them together and take it to your machine and join. This is the side after joining together. So the next thing I'm going to do, I also joined the sides for the lining too. So the next thing I'm going to do is to take the lining and turn over the neckline area. So the lining, the front part of the lining will be facing the front part of the fabric. So I'm going to join them together and sew. Then I'm going to top stitch towards the lining. So this is what you have after sewing the neckline. So I already top stitched, I already joined together to the lining. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to join the hem line together. So the lining and the fabric, also the front side facing the front side, I'm going to join it by the 0.5 inches that I used as the allowance. So we'll be joining them together. The next thing we are going to do is to close up the zip allowance part. So because we want this to be a neatly finished top, so we are going to close up the zip allowance by 0.25 inches, just a little bit, so that it will be closed up. This is it after sewing the zip allowance by just 0.25 inches. So now we don't have anywhere to turn over the cloth to the right side. So there are two methods you can go about to turn this over to the other side. This is the first method I'm going to use. I'm going to just open one of the side seams of the lining I'm going to open it up a little bit, so I can open it up by 4 inches. So I'm just going to loosen that side, and then I'm going to stitch the upper and the lower part, so that by the time you are opening up the clothes, it won't expand more. So that is what I'm doing here. Now this is the other method you can use. You can open up the hemline by about 4 inches or 5 inches. So from there you can bring out the fabric to the other side. So I'm going to be turning it over to the other side using the side seam that I use. So don't forget to make sure you stitch up the side seam. If you are using the side seam, make sure you stitch up the parts that are not open. So I'm just going to bring out the fabric like this from this side. So I'm just going to close up the hemline area that I opened. So you just fold it in like this by 0.5 inches, and then you close it up. Now the next thing we are going to do is to fix the zip to the fabric. That is the last thing we are doing. So the front side of the zip facing the front side of the fabric, then you pin it up and then you fix it. So guys, this is how the top turned out after fixing the zip. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope it was really understandable. Please do not leave without subscribing to my channel and also giving this video a thumbs up. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.